before we go any further, Mr. Peoples, I just want to recognize you, and I noticed on TV the other night that the Urban League recognized you for your work in affordable housing. And I just want to congratulate you and thank you. You're a treasured member of this board, and we appreciate everything you've done throughout your career to help people find housing. So just wanted to recognize you. Winston, do you?
Yeah, on behalf of the leadership and the entire staff of the Kentucky Housing Corporations, I want to congratulate PG and to thank him for all his many years of service to the Kentucky Housing Corporation. PG, I don't know how many years you've served. Have you counted the years that you've served on the Kentucky Housing Corporation?
No, I think when the first time I was appointed, Martha Lane may have been the governor. So, and I've had one period off. So I've been around a while.
Well, I was going to say, if I didn't have a number, I was going to say that you've been on the board since the beginning of time. But that might be stretching it a little bit, but not a whole lot. But and I want to say that we know that the honor that you received by the Urban League of Lexington was a very distinguished award, and we're very proud of you for that. And I just wanted to note that, you've been honored many times for your work and you deserve it. And one of the times you were honored was in 2018 when you received the Maestri Award on behalf of the
Kentucky. Yes.
So
yes.
Again, thank you for your years of service and congratulations on behalf of all of us here at Kentucky Housing.
Give me just a second to thank Kentucky Housing, because one of the signature activities of the Urban League that have put us in position to do and be who we are has been housing, and most of that is attributed to our relationship with Kentucky Housing, and we are forever grateful of that relationship.
Well, thank you. We're happy to be a partner with you.
Well, congratulations again, Mr. Peoples. We appreciate
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Everything you've done. So, okay, with that, we'll move on to item 3, which is an amended inducement resolution for the path off King Run. Jeremy Ratliff.
Yes, sir. I am playing the role of Sam Thorner at this meeting. He's on vacation this week. But I bring you an amended inducement resolution for the Path Off Cane Run project. This project was induced on May 20 at the May board meeting for the amount of $17,500,000. In July, the developer contacted us and let us know that their bids were coming back high and that their costs were increased, as is very common in this market, as most of you will have an appreciation for, but construction costs are just on this ever increasing pattern right now. And as a result, they need to have another $2.5 million of bonding authority in order to make the transaction work. So that would take the total ask to $20 million for the Path Off Cane Run project, which is new construction of 106 units in 19 different buildings that will be located on Cane Run Road in Louisville. It will serve 106 households at or below 60% of area median income. And the units will consist of 83 3-bedroom units and 23 4-bedroom units, which is a really nice distribution of housing size, as Ms. Hinko is nodding in the affirmative to, and I know she has an appreciation for it. The members of the development team are there in your materials. And so staff does recommend approval of an amended inducement resolution for the Path Off Cane Run, allowing them to access up to $20 million in bond cap. The project this is just the inducement resolution. The project will come back to the board after a full underwrite and approval by KHC of proceeding with the financing at that time for a final resolution.
Okay, do any members have any questions or comments to Jeremy in regard to this inducement resolution? If not, I would entertain a motion that we approve. And when you make that motion, and second, if you would mention your name, so make it easier for the staff to develop the minutes. So I need a motion for approval.
This is George. Go ahead.
So moved, Gail.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a second?
Kathy Hinko, second.
All right, thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Okay, Jeremy, Bardstown Apartments.
Yes, sir. This is a final resolution for flats at Bardstown. This project received its inducement at the August board meeting for a bond cap of up to $21.5 million. This would be the final resolution that will actually authorize the issuance of the bonds for the project. It has been underwritten by staff. It's received all its TEPRA hearing, and it's also been before the two committees within state government that's required. It involves the acquisition and new construction of 192 units on Buccal Bank Road and Bardstown Road in Louisville. It will serve 10 households at or below 30% of area median income, which is extremely low area median income for our purposes. And those are hard units to get in Kentucky. So we appreciate that. It will also have 86 units to serve those at 50% of area median income, 48 households at or below 60% of area median income, and 48 households at or below 80% of area median income, which is also nice for us to have the ability to serve people at that income level. The 192 units will consist of 48 one-bedroom units and 62 bedroom units, and also 84 three-bedroom units. The development team members are there in your materials for your review, and staff does recommend approval of a final bond resolution for flats at Bardstown.
Any members have any questions of Jeremy? If not, I'll entertain a motion that we approve this resolution.
This is George. I will move to approve the resolution.
Second, Gail.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Like sign, motion carries. Okay, the next item is the report of action recommendations of the Finance Committee at a meeting that was held on September 29th. Mr. Brunson, I'm going to turn it over to you to let you explain what happened.
Thank you very much. Give me just a minute because I was in a different window there. Hang on just a minute. Oh, where'd it go? Where'd it go? Where'd it go? I'm sorry, I was not ready for that. Where did I put it? Oh, it's up here. Well, Jim.
You need me to send another copy?
I don't know where it went.
Hang on.
I stuck it in my KC file.
Makes me feel good that somebody else has a little more trouble than I do.
I was just thinking the same thing. This lifts my ego this afternoon.
You sending it, Jim? Jim?
It's on its way.
Okay, thanks. Oh. There we go. All right. Thank you, Jim. Okay. Thanks, everyone, for your patience there. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, everyone. The Finance Committee did meet September 29th of 2022 at 2 o'clock, virtually, I will say. We had the pleasure of listening to Jim Statler presenting on his report on the secondary market trading results for the first quarter of fiscal 2023. It says 23, Jim. I'm not sure if that's right.
Oh, it's the first quarter.
Okay,
It was
all right.
through September.
Oh, that's right, because that's right. I'm sorry. So the first quarter of 23 is showing the actual trading gains of 732,000, which trailed the plan, which was 1.7 million. Jim did explain that the mortgage market is experiencing tremendous volatility, pricing difficulties in light of the very rapidly rising interest rates. As we all know, interest rates have basically doubled in the last 6 months. He also advised the committee that due to present mortgage market conditions, if there was no improvement in pricing, he was not optimistic that the trading gains would make plan for fiscal 22 period. Jim then went on to present a summary schedule of the single family servicing portfolio, reflecting a slight increase in principal balances from June to August, revising the recent downward trend, reversing the recent downward trend and resulted from a sharp drop off from last year's high level of mortgage refinance activity, again due to the rapidly rising interest rates. The weighted average servicing fee rate increased very slightly from June to August. Mr. Stadler did also present a schedule of loan delinquencies, highlighting the impact of the end of the COVID loan forbearance. Both overall levels of delinquency and the severity of the defaults showed marked improvement. As the various end of forbearance relief options continue to work through the portfolio, it is anticipated that defaults will continue to improve. And finally, Jim advised the committee that despite current market conditions, the secondary market mortgage purchase program remains the preferred method of funding our single family loan production, although management is considering bond financing possibilities as well as possible loan product design changes to improve performance. The committee was then presented with the fiscal June 30, 22 audit by Crow LLC, partner Christine McDonough. Ms. McDonough is present this afternoon to share highlights of the audit report with the entire board. The report was in the packet you received and will be scrolled on the screen during the presentation. So Christine, I'll let you take over.
Great, thank you so much. We do have a presentation of the audited financial statements here on your screen, and I'm going to hit a couple of highlights. If we can scroll first to page 22 of the PDF document. Page 22, 23, and 24 are going to be the audit opinions on these financial statements. We did issue an unmodified opinion that was dated on June 30th of 2022. That indicates that the financial statements are clear and free of any material misstatements. And it's helpful to note as well that through the course of our audit, we didn't identify any audit adjustments that were either waived or posted to these financial statements. The audit opinion walks through the responsibilities of management as well as the responsibilities of the auditor. And I would say that these financial statements have been prepared by your management team. So a couple of highlights on the actual documents themselves. If you'll turn to page 25, the financial statements start out with an MD&A, and the MD&A is drafted by your management team, and it really provides an overview of the status of operations kind of throughout the year. So if there were to be a page of the financial statements that you would read, it would probably be of course, after the audit opinion, it would be this page right here, right, where it's going to kind of walk through some of the highlights for the year. You know, the corporation did increase their net position by about $23.7 million over the course of the year. And a lot of this had to do as a result of some of those single family originations that took place, as well as the gains on those originations. The organization had a very strong year where those single family originations totaled $560 million, as you can see in that second bullet, which was an increase over the previous year. And as well in the third bullet, the servicing portfolio. So those are those loans that have been sold on the secondary market, but that the organization continues to service. So they're processing payments, they're answering customer questions and items like that. That also increased by $27.4 million. On the government side of the house, the organization also was very busy as they were managing the Coronavirus Relief and Economic Securities Act funds, as well as other funds that came in through coronavirus and COVID-19 funding. Those funds that were housing related were routed through KHC to manage the distribution of that. And you will see some of the increases, and I can point those out on the income statement to see just the huge volume of funding that ran through the organization over the past 12 months. As you can see down at the bottom in this, the last two bullets, we've talked a lot in the past about the pension plan. This will probably be the last year that we're going to mention it. I'm going to show kind of the impact of that final payout of the pension, and then really just kind of the disclosures within the financial statements that replace where the vast pension disclosures used to be. If you'll scroll to page 27 of the PDF, you'll see a very quick snapshot of the balance sheet or the statement of financial position. I'm also going to draw your attention to a more detailed one, as I think it helps to provide a little bit more information of some of the holdings of the organization. But this one does provide that year-over-year comparison where you can see there really, there was a lot of activity, and I think you see more of that on the income statement, not a ton here. The next page, though, is going to provide an overview of the income statement, both for your government activities as well as the business type activities. Just a couple of numbers to show here, as I indicated, operating grants on the governmental activities. You see the volume of this, 401 million versus 251 million in the previous year. A lot of that increase is due to that COVID-19 funding that ran through the organization and was then dispersed to employee or individuals within the Commonwealth. So almost a double increase kind of over the previous year. There was a huge amount of effort that took place there. You see the decline in operating revenues from the business type activities. This has a lot to do with, as Steve mentioned in his overview, the changes with respect to the funding of those mortgage loans. And you see that showing up on the income statement there. You can also see on the program expenses, you've got the eviction relief funds as well as other federal and state programs on the government side. And those are, again, those pass-through funds related to COVID-19. The final item that I wanted to show here is you see a very large difference in program expenses on your business type activities from 22 to 21. It would make you think that program expenses doubled in the current year. That's not necessarily the case. As you can see, there was that negative 19 million on the administrative side. In the previous year, there was a reduction in the pension expense in order to provide the actual liability that would need to be settled with the state. That caused a reduction in administrative expenses for 21. I would say 2022 is really more of a normalized year, and that would be more of what you would anticipate. If you'd remove that 19 million out, you would see that year over year, the expenses for these two line items would be very similar. From there, I'd like to go to page 33 of the PDF. While most of the financial statements are going to provide a snapshot of what's happened in the past, starting on page 33 and for the next several pages, it really describes, your management team has gone through the effort of describing that financial outlook of things that are challenges that the organization faces on the horizon. So you've got the continued impact of COVID, you've got the interest rate volatility and that volatility within the mortgage market that's identified, as well as the resulting impact that has on some of the securities pricing that can drive some volatility, since the securities that the organization holds are also carried at fair value. So it provides a very in-depth look at some of those items that could be challenging and items that you are talking about in these board meetings and other meetings for the organization. Page 36 is going to provide that more detailed overview of the balance sheet. I do like to point out two items here. One, that you no longer see you no longer see a liability for that pension expense or for that pension liability. That is an item that was settled during the current year. So it's no longer a remaining item on the liabilities. You also see a rather large liability for unearned grant of these financial statements. And the last item that I just wanted to point out that there were no subsequent events with respect to the financial statements. In addition to the financial statement audit, we also complete a single audit, which is an audit over some of the major programs that the organization is involved in. The major programs that we tested this year would be the Emergency Solutions Grant, Homeowners Assistance, Emergency Rental Assistance, Weatherization, mortgage insurance home and the veterans housing guaranteed and insured load programs. So all of those were tested from a control standpoint as well as compliance with the actual regulations. We did not have any items to report with respect to those programming. We did pass along a comment to your management team regarding the preparation of the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. There's an additional review that needs to be performed over that, but that is an item that has received a lot of attention over the past year. We have no qualms with management being able to kind of add those additional reviews. As I indicated, there were no waived adjustments, no posted adjustments. So there were no numbers that we asked your management team to change throughout the year. As we've gone through the financial statements, I've indicated some of the areas that are more significant in nature. We do spend a lot of our time auditing those more significant items. And I would also indicate that we had no disagreements with your management team. They were a great team to work with, answered all of our questions, and we asked a lot of questions. So we definitely appreciate their involvement through the audit process. So I want to especially thank Michael, Tracy, Kevin, Jim, the rest of all of their teams and the staff at KHC for all of their efforts in complying with this audit process. With that, we did have the opportunity when we met with the Finance Committee to meet in executive session. So just from a governance standpoint, I like for the full board to know that that is a best practice and is one that was carried out during the Finance Committee. I'm happy to take any questions.
Anyone have any questions for Kristen?
Kristen, I do have one question. You have had no concerns or with the operations during your audit at all, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Well, that speaks highly of the management team.
Very much so, yes, I would agree, very much so.
Steve, that's all I have.
Kristen, thank you very much. We appreciate all of your efforts and joining us here today. I should point out that the committee did meet with Kristen management with management not present, obviously to determine if there are any concerns that would allow the members of the committee to speak freely. There were none. Does anyone have any comments in general for the presentation I just made or what Kristen delivered?
I just want to know, are we supposed to move to accept the audit? I didn't.
Yep, we do that.
Okay.
As soon as Steve yields back to me, Kathy. We'll
okay.
Okay. All right. So hearing none, would like to make a motion to the board of directors to accept the fiscal 2022 audit report.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Brunson. Do I have a second?
Kathy, I second.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Just let me say that I have a lot of faith in Kristen McDonough. She's a senior partner with Crow. She does a lot of auditing for the bank here, and I know she does a wonderful job. So, Kristen, we appreciate your all's effort and the hard work that you all done for KHC.
Thank you.
And this is Kathy. I do have a question not about the audit, which was great, and the team is great. I also want to commend the team for planning for the future with all the vagaries of what is going to happen, and interest rates are only going to go up more, or at least we're led to believe that. So, it's a challenging time for KHC, and anything that we can do to help as a board, I'm sure everybody agrees, anything we can do to help meet that challenge, you have only to ask.
Yeah, good point.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy. And Mr. Chairman, if any of you or the directors has a crystal ball and help me know where interest rates are going and all the other stuff, just bring it by.
I was going to ask you, Jim, what's going to happen when they raise rates next month. So So, Jim, do you have any comments you want to make in regard to the financial statements?
Just one, and as usual, and Crow has been our auditor now for as many years as I've been here, and once again did a very professional job. Again, doing it virtually is more difficult, I would think, than face to face. But I commend Kristen and her team for doing a as least intrusive audit as we could get, and working with us and us working with them. I thank my team as well on getting this sucker done on time and ready to present to the board and the rest of the world.
Thank you. All right,
Mr. Chairman, that's concludes my report. I'll yield back to you.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Thank you for the good work the Finance Committee does.
You're welcome.
We appreciate it. All right, so we're going to move on to item number 7, which is a report of the Executive Committee at a meeting held September 29th. And Jeremy, I'm going to yield to you on this. I think you have the information there in front of you.
Yes, sir. So the Executive Committee of the board met on September 29th, immediately preceding the Finance Committee's meeting at which the audit was presented. The sole item taken up by that committee in that meeting was the extension of a contract with KPMG. Hopefully you will recall that we've been doing a contract with KPMG to assist us in the processing of Healthy at Home eviction relief funds applications. Those are the dollars that were COVID relief dollars that were put out to help people who were faced with eviction in the wake of the COVID pandemic. We've been trying to be excellent stewards of that money and not contract and overcommit on contracts with those dollars. And that has resulted in us amending that contract a number of times on shorter periods. This particular instance, the contract was due to expire on September 30th. That's why we met on the 29th. We were able to get that finally negotiated for another extension before it ended on September 30th. It also allowed us to avoid having a retroactive contract with Government Contract Review Committee downtown, which is never a good thing to have and is not the proper course of action if it can be helped. So we were able to prevent that from happening. I did extend that contract. Instead of on a shorter period of time, we put it on the fiscal year basis. So it's extended through June 30th of 2023, which will be the end of the fiscal year, along with which is consistent with our other contracts, generally speaking. And we did increase the amount of that contract a little bit to cover the additional services that we would be having them perform for us over that period of time. If anybody has specific questions about that contract, Jonathan Coulter is on here, and his area of the organization is the one responsible for processing those applications and can speak more to what KPMG does for us. But that was the sole action of the committee in that meeting. It was approved. The extension was approved, and it did clear government contract review. So we were able to get that contract in place. And thanks to everyone who was willing to meet with us for that one item on that one day. We try to be respectful of your time, but that was an instance where we just had to have you act, and we appreciate everyone who was willing to do that for us.
Anybody have any questions of Jeremy in regard to the committee meeting? Okay, Jeremy, we don't need a motion to approve that, do we?
No, sir, that's an informational item.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Jeremy. All right, so item 8, adoption of the updated administrative plan for rental assistance. Jonathan Coulter.
Yes, sir. Thank you for everybody being here today. As everyone is aware, federal guidelines require us to have an administrative plan, and it has to be approved by our board. Today, we're just bringing a few minor updates to the admin plan for approval. Number one, we are wanting to update our waiting list information. It's on page 13.1 or section 13.1, page 31. The updated verbiage regarding the opening of our HCV waiting list to state KHC may accept applications for the months of January and July when KHC opens the waiting list and begins accepting applications. Notification will be made of availability, timeframe, and of accepting application and the nature of housing assistance for eligible households to the public through KHC's website, eGram, social media, minority media, and other suitable means. This notice will contain the date applications will be accepted and the methods for applications being accepted. So the major change with this is right now how our admin plan is written. When we open our waiting list, it is open for an entire month. Right now we have around 10,000 applications on our waiting list. So we wanted to have some flexibility if we needed to open our waiting list, maybe for a shorter amount of time, not for just the entire full month. Because when we have it open for a full month, we can get quite inundated with applications. The second piece with the waiting list, we want to add in verbiage regarding the opening of the waiting list for victims of state or federally declared natural disaster. And this will read, KHC may at any time place victims of a state or federally declared natural disaster on KHC's waiting list within 120 days of the declaration. Applicants must be identified by a state or federal emergency agency as victims of the natural disaster. The number of applications that can be assisted under this preference will be depend on available funding. So again, as you guys, everyone's aware, we've had a couple of natural disasters this year, and we wanted to be able to have the flexibility to be able to assist those families when we can. Does anybody have any questions about the waiting list?
Anybody have any questions of Jonathan? Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion to approve this.
I make a motion, Beverly.
Okay, thanks, Beverly. Do I have a second?
Second, Chad.
Okay, Chad. Have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. All right, Jonathan, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, item 9, adoption of updated privacy policy. Aaron Kimla.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me to present this. My name is Aaron Kimla. I'm a staff attorney. I've reviewed the KHC privacy policy, which is a requirement of the GLBA that it be sent out to all customers of the corporation. There are a few suggested amendments I have to it for updating the model form, which allows the institutions who use it to have a safe harbor. After changes are made, a written copy of the new policy must be sent to customers within 100 days of the change. This can be included either with mailing in a mortgage statement or provided electronically if they are doing business electronically with the corporation. The major changes that I've included include the formatting to kind of match this more standard format that you've probably seen in credit card statements, your own mortgage statements, of this table format with the shading in the form. There are certain words and phrases that need to be italicized based on the model form that KHC's policy that I reviewed did not have italicized. There is the reasons we can share your personal information for our affiliates' everyday business purposes. There were supposed to be 2 sections there. We had combined them into 1. I've separated them out here. There were some general terms that were recommended in the instructions of the model form that needed to be used in certain lists, and those, we did not have all of those certain terms. We had different terms. I've updated that to match the terms that best represent KHC's line of business. In the contact information for the questions there, we had call this number or contact us on our form, which was a link to somewhere on the website, which would not transfer into a paper version of the form. So that has been updated to the suggested just a web address for the General Kentucky Housing Corporation. And hopefully they'd be able to find ways to contact us there for questions on the privacy policy there. And those were the majority of the changes that I recommended.
Ms. Kimla,
Any questions?
I would just say that this is a really important function of any financial entity because it does impact credit reports and all other kinds of things. And my review of this privacy policy is that you have done an excellent job here. So I certainly appreciate it. Anybody have any questions of Aaron in regard to this privacy policy?
I just have one that if people go to kyhousing.org, will there be something that says if you have a question about privacy? Or, I mean, will there be some direction once you get there about what to do?
I'm not aware of any specific direction at this point. Again, like many other forms that I've gotten in this sort of thing, most of them are general to the website to lead you to find further contact information. The regulation didn't specify that it needed to go specifically to a certain spot. It was just kind of more of a way of contacting the corporation.
Yeah, I wasn't criticizing. I may be suggesting that.
Oh, yes, of course. I just, I thought that was the question as to where it was going.
Our contact information is there.
Pardon?
The goal of referring them to the website is that there's lots of contact information there for people to reach us. Some of our policies are on there, albeit they can be a little difficult to navigate to at times, but all of our contact information is on the website. So if they're trying to reach us, they can access us through that.
Just speaking from personal experience of going to a website and then not knowing who to contact or something. And that's about the website, and I guess not really about the law.
It's a good point, and
but I'm fine with it. I mean,
you raise a good point, Kathy, and you know, we have complaints here all the time about people not being able to contact us. Although we feel like we have it covered, but still, it is a major concern of customers. So, okay, anybody else have any questions of Aaron? If not, I'd entertain a motion that we adopt this privacy policy.
Kathy, I'll move.
Thank you, Kathy. Do I have a second?
This is George. I'll second it.
Okay, thank you, George. Do I have a motion and a second? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Aaron. We appreciate your work. All right. Number 10, adoption of updated information security policy. Lauren Van Sickle. Lauren?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We did a review in our Information Security Committee of the information security policy that we have out there. It is an internal document to ensure decisions that are made on behalf of the corporation are actually going to be reflected, tells the employees what they need to be doing to meet making sure information remains secure. So we realized in reviewing this policy that we had some redundancies among some of our other policies, like our employee handbook and throughout the document itself. So really what we've done is taken out some of that redundancy language, made it a little clearer to understand so that certain open-ended questions are now answered for employees so that they can ensure they are keeping information secure and following the policy. We've removed some of the specificity as well that specifically talked about specific types of technologies. As you know, technology is advancing quickly, and so we made that a little bit of a broader language so that any future technologies hopefully could be encompassed in that as well, and we won't have to update it as often. Other than that, there were no substantive changes. Most of the language has remained the same within the policy. And that's all I have for you all.
Okay, anybody have any questions for Lauren? This is excellent work as well. And it's an excellent security policy. So any members have any questions or comments with Lauren? Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion that we adopt this information security policy.
Marilyn, I move.
Okay, thank you, Marilyn. Do we have a second?
Second, Isaac Myers.
Thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Okay, thanks, Lauren. Jeremy, you want to talk about the authorization to enter into a joinder agreement with Kentucky Deferred Comp?
Yes, sir. Bear with me while I try to get us to that.
Okay.
Apologize, my Adobe is not acting correctly. Okay, here we go. So KHC has maintained for many years a 457 and a 401k deferred plan through deferred compensation for our employees to be participants in. Prior to us exiting KERS, that was available to our employees. If they wanted to defer extra money in for retirement, they could do so through those plans. In the wake of KERS, the exit from KERS, all employee deferrals of their income out of their paychecks for retirement go into one of these plans, and KHC matches up to 4% of their gross income that they defer into the 401k plan. In order to continue to have those plans with Kentucky Deferred Comp requires that we update our joinder agreement with them, which is the agreement by which we contract with Kentucky Deferred Comp to administer those plans for us and for our employees to be eligible participants in those plans. They have us update those joinder agreements periodically. Similar to the agreement that I brought before this body in, I believe it was August, at the August meeting regarding our 401a plan, where we have to update it periodically to make sure we are compliant with all of the changes to statutes and regulations that occur over time. Periodically, we have to update that. This is a similar process. So staff does recommend approval of a resolution authorizing KHC to enter into an updated joinder agreement with Kentucky Deferred Comp. This resolution would also authorize Winston Miller to sign any and all documents necessary to effectuate us entering into that joinder agreement.
Any members have any questions of Jeremy in regard to this? Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion that we approve this.
Well, it's Kathy. I'll move.
Thank you, Kathy. In a second.
Second, Chad.
Okay. All in favor of the authorization, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Jeremy. Okay, appointment of corporate secretary. I'm going to call on Winston Miller and Jeremy Ratliff to talk about this. Winston?
Before we get into the particular resolutions that are reflected in item 12 and item 13 of the agenda, which Jeremy is going to explain the legal reasons behind these and the impact of these two resolutions, let me just give the big overview picture of all this. And on about October 4th, we announced to our board, you all, and to our staff and to the world that unfortunately for us, Jeremy Ratliff has decided to re-enter private practice, the private practice of law, and will be leaving Kentucky Housing Corporation, who he served for the last 4 years. We're from the Kentucky Housing Corporation's point of view, and from my personal point of view, I'm sad and disappointed to see Jeremy leave. But I understand that from a professional development point of view and a personal point of view, there are good reasons for him to pursue this opportunity that's available to him in private practice. Jeremy is going to be, tomorrow is going to be his last day with us. He is, as I said, associating with a law firm in Los Angeles, California that specializes in affordable housing work. He will not be moving to Los Angeles. He'll be remaining in Lexington, Kentucky, at least for the foreseeable future, and engaging in this practice remotely. As I mentioned, I think Jeremy has been with us for 7 years. He's made many significant contributions to the leadership and to the activities of Kentucky Housing Corporation, and we certainly appreciate greatly his service to the corporation, and we of course wish him the very best in the new endeavors that he is about to engage in. After conferring with Chair Denham, we've asked the chairman if we can add an additional item to the agenda today, which is not on the agenda, and place before you an additional document or proposed resolution that relates to our appreciation and hopefully your appreciation and recognition of Jeremy's service and contribution. Mr. Chair, with your consent, I would like to ask Lauren Van Sinkle to read a resolution which we've prepared for the board's consideration, and it's the resolution which we shared with you earlier today.
Absolutely. Go right ahead, Lauren. Thank you.
Thank you. A resolution recognizing Jeremy Ratliff for his service and leadership at Kentucky Housing Corporation and for his commitment to the cause of affordable housing in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Whereas Jeremy Ratliff has declared his intent to exit public service on October 28, 2022, and whereas Jeremy Ratliff has been employed by Kentucky Housing Corporation from February 17, 2015 to October 28, 2022, and whereas Jeremy Ratliff's knowledge and expertise have been valuable contributions to the deliberations of the Board of Directors and the development of Kentucky Housing Corporation programs and staff. And whereas Jeremy Ratliff, through his leadership at Kentucky Housing Corporation, has been instrumental in creating the position that Kentucky Housing Corporation holds as one of the leading state housing finance agencies in the nation. And whereas the Board of Directors of Kentucky Housing Corporation desires to recognize Jeremy Ratliff for his commitment to the furtherance of affordable housing as a major quality of life issue for all Kentuckians. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Directors of Kentucky Housing Corporation does hereby express its deepest appreciation for the service and outstanding contributions of Jeremy Ratliff to the cause of affordable housing, to Kentucky Housing Corporation, and to the Commonwealth of Kentucky.
Thank you, Lauren. Mr. Chairman, with that resolution, we would hope that the board would act upon that.
Thank you, Winston. Thank you, Lauren. And just let me say personally that Jeremy has been a great asset to me and has really helped me down through the last several months, and has put up with my technological challenges. And Jeremy, I appreciate everything you've done for Kentucky Housing and for me personally. So with that, do any members have any comments or any questions that they want to ask in regard to this resolution? If not, I would consider a motion to approve this resolution.
Kathy, I definitely move to approve this resolution.
Thank you, Kathy.
Barry, I'll second that.
Thank you, Barry. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Jeremy, thank you so much for all your hard work. Winston, I'll yield back to you.
Well, I think we'll let Jeremy explain the basis and the need for resolution number 59, and after that's dealt with, the same logic and reasoning I think will apply to resolution 60.
Thank you. More uncomfortable I could not be, but I greatly appreciate that. It means a whole lot to me, and KHC is easily the highlight of my career to this point, and it's very bittersweet to leave. With that being said, one of the pleasures that I've had for a little over 5 years now is to serve as the corporate secretary. That kind of comes with being the general counsel. It also allows me to get to meet with you fine folks on a regular basis and do what we're doing here. But with my departure, Lauren will be filling the role of interim general counsel until a decision is made about a permanent replacement, whether that's Lauren or whoever it may be. And so she would be the appropriate person to serve as the corporate secretary moving forward. And so staff recommends the adoption of a resolution approving the appointment of, or actually appointing Lauren Van Sickle as corporate secretary effective October 29th, as tomorrow is my last day.
Okay, thank you, Jeremy. Any members have any questions of Jeremy in regard to this resolution? If not, I will entertain a motion that we approve.
So moved, Chad.
Chad, thank you. Do I have a second?
This is George, I'll second.
Okay, thank you all. So I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, motion carries. Okay, Jeremy, you want to talk about the signatory authority?
Yes, sir. So the board authorizes certain officers of the corporation, specifically the executive team of the corporation, which is made up of Winston as the executive director and then all the deputy executive directors, to sign documents to carry out the day-to-day business of KHC, because you find folks have your own careers and your own things going on and can't be at KHC every day to sign stuff. So with my departure, I need to be removed from the signatory authority for the corporation, and Lauren as interim general counsel needs to be added in my place so that things can be carried out on the day-to-day business of Kentucky Housing Corporation. And so staff recommends approval by the board of directors of a resolution updating the corporation's signatory authority to remove Jeremy Ratliff as general counsel, deputy executive director, legal services and compliance, and replacing me with Lauren Van Sickle as interim general counsel, deputy executive director, legal services and compliance.
Any members have any questions of Jeremy in regard to this resolution? If not, I would entertain a motion that we approve.
So moved, Gail.
Thank you, Gail. Do I have a second?
This Barry, second.
Thank you, Barry. So I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Jeremy. We wish you the best.
Thank you.
Okay, so if we could move on to 14 informational items. I'm going to yield to Winston on this to talk about the disaster response in eastern western Kentucky. So Winston, you want to start off with this?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Actually, we have 3 informational items that are listed here on your agenda, and I'm going to sort of introduce all 3 and then allow the speakers to proceed from one to the other to make the presentations and entertain any questions that you all may have of them. First, Wendy Smith is going to address, as the title indicates, the disaster response for the eastern and western Kentucky. And then as the deputy director in terms of programs, she's had primary responsibility, lead responsibility for the COVID emergency rental assistance program. And that's been in 2 phases. There's ERA 1 and ERA 2. And what Wendy will be addressing is the closeout of ERA 1 and perhaps some comments about the status of ERA 2. Once she's completed those 2 items, John Davidson is going to give you a brief report on the 2022 Kentucky Affordable Housing Conference, which was held in the latter days of September, very successfully in Louisville, Kentucky, and give you some of the highlights on that. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Wendy.
Thanks, Winston, and good afternoon, Chairman Denham and members of the board. I am going to give you all just a couple of updates. Jeremy, if you don't mind making the PDF a little bit smaller so more of the slide can show, that's great. That's perfect. So you can go to the next slide.
I just want the record to show that Wendy Smith asked me to shrink something on a screen.
Yeah, usually every single meeting, I always need a larger resolution because I have compromised eyesight. So first, I'm going to give you all just a brief update, and I'll entertain questions if you have them about KHC's role with disaster response in Eastern and Western Kentucky. And we'll start with Western. We'll start with what we've done in both regions because we did learn quite a bit from Western Kentucky and replicated some of those same actions. So in both Western and Eastern Kentucky, we created kind of an inventory of resources on a web page. Now, what we learned from Western Kentucky and have since applied is that it's too hard to find stuff on our webpage per Kathy's comments earlier. So our Whip Smart communications director created, basically bought or got a hold of a domain name, kydisasters.com, that actually takes you to the KHC website, but you don't have to know how to navigate our website. So we have that link. And on that page, there's lots of resources and connection to disaster resources. There is also, per item number 2 on this list, an online searchable inventory of available apartments. That doesn't just happen. We have staff who call around to the apartments that are in our portfolio of multifamily projects that we have funded, Section 8 projects, to try to find available units. So I'll show you some screenshots of that in a minute, but we created that because most folks do not want to move, but if there is a unit somewhere nearby and a rental resource, whether it's from FEMA or from us that can help them, we want them to know about available units that they might consider short or long term. It's not optimal, but for some folks, they just don't have a home to live in. In Western Kentucky, there are only a handful of folks still in the state parks and fewer than 5 households in hotels. But in Eastern Kentucky, and I'd have to look up the numbers, it's still in the hundreds of folks that are living in state parks. There's not many hotels out that way, but state park lodges and rooms, and a lot of folks in travel trailers, which is maybe better than a hotel room or a lodge room, but only a little bit. So Winston and I meet twice per week with a group of fellow state agencies that includes Kentucky Emergency Management, but also many other state agencies, because ever since the tornado, it's been kind of an all hands on deck approach to trying to, bring resources to the disaster impacted areas. And just like with us, I feel like we are witnessing in real time all of our fellow agencies having learned lessons in Western Kentucky and applying them in Eastern Kentucky, and things moving a lot faster by virtue of that. We at KHC shifted for both Eastern and Western Kentucky some of our Affordable Housing Trust Fund dollars between programs and uses so that we could get partners dollars to do home repair, because FEMA money and Community Development Block Grant disaster recovery money can take so long, or with the FEMA money, it can be so hard to get access to and get eligibility for, that we wanted, if there was a way to keep people housed by way of just making some modest repairs to their homes, and our limit is around $25,000 to $30,000 with those funds, we wanted to make that available to our partners who already know how to use those dollars, already have a role in their communities. So we did that, and we actually worked with our multifamily programs to free up about $2 million extra dollars for home repair, particularly in Eastern Kentucky. In addition, and I don't think I have this on here, we have sent out $450,000 in flexible operating grants to existing partners who we know are going to or are already playing a role in long-term recovery. They played a role in disaster response. And for many of them, they're not able to do their regular lines of business with KHC, so they're not making a developer fee or an admin fee because they're too busy working on disaster stuff and nobody pays them for that. And we want them to keep their capacity because they're essential to long-term rebuilding. So again, $450,000 of just discretionary funds from KHC to those select partners that already have a strong relationship with us and a great track record of using our dollars. We know they're going to be pivotal for long-term recovery. And then we also have talked a lot with the Department for Local Government about aligning our housing programs with the community development disaster recovery funds that have already come for Western Kentucky, $75 million. The dollars aren't here in Kentucky yet. A plan has to go to HUD and all that kind of stuff, but we're working together on that. And our hope is that we use that same model for Eastern Kentucky, assuming that Eastern Kentucky also gets an allocation of those disaster recovery funds from the federal government. Again, with Eastern Kentucky, I wanted to let you all know, this is going to be a much more complex and long-term recovery. The upside is that in Eastern Kentucky, there are so many more nonprofit housing partners, community action agencies, service agencies, homeless partners, and some philanthropic partners that are pretty involved. That makes it more complex. And the nature of the disaster is a lot more complex in terms of you can't just rebuild where a tornado hit. When a flood comes through, you have to look at building out of the floodplain and or spending more to get a house elevated. So I'll just share with you all, FEMA not too long ago committed to an approach which is called alternative disaster housing. You're looking at a shotgun that is, it's a house built on a wood frame. It can be driven in, but it's detached from its trailer, and it can be on a permanent foundation or on a temporary one. This meets FEMA's definition of temporary housing, but their aim would then be to leave those units in Kentucky so that they could be sold to their occupants, sold to a nonprofit, affixed to a permanent foundation, potentially left where they are if that community is a permanent community. Our hope is we really would like to hold FEMA to this because this allows folks to get to permanency a lot faster. They did this in Mississippi after Katrina, and families who got these houses versus a FEMA trailer, they were able to have Thanksgiving. They were able to feel like they were in a home that had a real full kitchen and a real bathroom and some common space. It's not big, but it's better than a trailer. And it made them feel like they were back to normal a lot quicker than folks who were in a trailer for a long period of time. We have a lot of nonprofit partners who are working already on home repairs and home building with our funds and other funds. They are also advocating for funding for those projects, as well as they've asked the state to consider something like a disaster housing trust fund so that there is always kind of a rainy day fund for housing after a disaster, rather than requiring special legislative sessions and really trying to pull teeth with FEMA to have a way to help families immediately, because that FEMA money takes a while and can be really hard to get to. And the CDBG disaster recovery money takes it 1 to 3 years to get on the ground. And that's just too long. Next slide. So this is just to show you when we go out to meet with partners or to resource fairs, we now just take a flyer with this QR code, and that takes folks to our disaster resources page rather than giving them, 100 links or stuff they have to go find. They can just QR code this with their phone and they go right to the disaster page. Next slide, please. We have an inventory of available units, again, on that page. As you can see here, right now we have about 314 units in Kentucky, some in Tennessee, Virginia, and just 7 in West Virginia. We tried to survey neighboring states, neighboring counties to try to, because depending on where someone lives in Eastern Kentucky, it might be easier to go to a neighboring state than somewhere in Kentucky. And then the next slide is just a map showing you we have that, so folks can click on a map, they can click on a list, they can search by county. They have a lot of ways to look for units, and they get contact information. They can even find out how many bedrooms a unit might have and if it is accessible or senior age restricted. Okay, so I will pause there because board members may have questions about Eastern or Western Kentucky, and I don't want to railroad over that.
I have one question. If they access your funds, does that eliminate them from accessing FEMA?
That is always a concern and a conversation topic that comes up over and over, Mike, in meetings, which is trying to make sure we don't do anything that makes people ineligible for FEMA. And that is it's so hard for the state and our partners and us, because the idea that you would say, well, you're going to have to wait a long, long time because we want FEMA to go first, but FEMA doesn't arrive first necessarily. That is a balancing act, and it's the topic of a lot of conversations and trying to figure out how to make sure access to some funds doesn't eliminate their ability to get FEMA assistance.
Wendy, I just want to thank you and your staff for the wonderful work you've done in both disasters. The Kentucky Housing Corporation has stepped up, and we certainly appreciate it. Any other members have any comments or questions they have of Wendy in regard to the disaster?
Thank you, Wendy.
You're welcome. I want to say everybody on my staff, none of them have disaster in their job title, and they have often had to step up to do stuff they never had figured on doing, had thought about doing, and there's just been a lot of creative thinking and problem solving across staff. So it's certainly not I who deserve the credit on that. There's a lot of folks in housing programs and communications and IT, helping out.
I'd just like to say, having that resource of knowing other places that you can rent, I know requires a lot of work, and I know is really a great service. So thank you for doing that.
Thanks, Kathy. I appreciate that. It is a lot of work. I don't do that work, but I know it is a lot of work because my staff ask every few weeks, do you want us to stop? And I say no, and they keep going. So it is a lot of work.
That just goes to show that you have a great team.
We do. They are very committed and caring. And I feel like since the pandemic, everybody's been doing at least 1.5 jobs,
So Wendy, will you give all your staff and all the people involved the board's appreciation for all the work they've done on these disasters?
Absolutely, I will. Yeah. All right. Well, then I'll move on to sharing with you all kind of a closeout report, if you will, of our ERA-1 grant, which is the COVID-19 emergency rental assistance that came to the state of Kentucky, so to the finance cabinet, and then came to KHC via a sub-grant from finance. We have administered this, and I'm going to call it ERA-1. We've administered it through our Healthy at Home Eviction Relief Program. That is our title for it, not the federal government's title. So we launched in February of 2021, and we stopped using ERA-1 funds at the end of April 2022. There are many reasons why we stopped using the funds. A lot of it has to do with Treasury's plans to sweep dollars if you hadn't used them from the second bucket. I won't go into all of the wonkiness with that, but it was a strategic decision for us to stop at the end of April. We now have reached the end of the grant period. September 30th was the last day that we could use the ERA-1 funds. So I wanted to share with the board kind of the results. Some of them are numeric, some of them are about the help that we got to people. So in the 14 months that we ran the program with ERA-1 funds, the original grant was about $264 million. We have, as KHC, through Healthy at Home Eviction Relief, we have deployed $140.4 million. So that's over $10 million per month in payments for people's rent and rent arrears, sometimes for lease-up costs, and for utility arrears, future utilities. Sometimes it's for utility, rehookups and that kind of stuff. We also sub-granted $38.7 million to Louisville and Lexington. We took $18.3 million in total admin, and that is KHC, the finance cabinet, and the public protection cabinet, which runs our website and application portal. So that is all in admin. And that is 9% of the total deployed funds, only 7% of the overall grant. So when you add it all up, $195.5 million in total was deployed as assistance, subgranted, and thereby deployed as assistance in Louisville and Lexington, or taken as admin. We have returned $22 million voluntarily to Treasury because we stopped using these funds and shifted to ERA 2. Again, that was a strategic program management decision, and returning those funds now allows Treasury to grant it back out to another grantee in the country, who then will be given until the end of the calendar year to use the funds. So it was pretty strategic. Okay, next. So in all, $140.4 million was sent out through Healthy at Home Eviction Relief over 14 months. This was comprised of over 42,680 individual payments to help almost 31,000 households. And again, we are still running this program, so those numbers have grown, but with a different funding source. I just want to pause on that because we're very, very proud of that. And then to show you this data from the administrative office. So it's hard to see because you can't see the key at the bottom, but there is, thank you, Jeremy. So the orange line is 2019 forcible detainer cases in the courts, meaning eviction cases in the courts. Not necessarily people set out, but where it's filed. The eviction is filed by the landlord. So you can see that orange line is pretty high. 2020, the red line, is you can see a dramatic drop in 2020. Now, it flatlines because the courts really basically closed. It starts to climb back up because there were ways to evict tenants, even when the moratoriums were happening. But what you will see is even when it returns, it stays well below 2019 levels in 2020. Now, what we are seeing in 21 is it climbing back up. And then definitely in 22, we are seeing eviction rates almost returning to 2019 levels, which is pretty shocking to us because we're still deploying a lot of funds. We are paying out $2 million to $2.5 million per week to help people with rent. We're also, though, seeing more and more people are getting evicted. And what we do is we give them a relocation voucher where we commit to paying for their lease up costs and 3 months of rent so that they can move somewhere else. But supply is very tight. Rent escalation has just been crushing for a lot of households. So we can see that we did a lot of good. We are very nervous about the trend this year. I will also just take a little victory lap and make sure that you all know that Kentucky really was a leader with ERA implementation. We were one of the first states to launch. We were one of the earliest adopters for many of the Treasury flexibilities, which required really thoughtful risk taking, but we did it. We were one of the first and one of the very few still who do an import of court data into our system so that we can document by proxy with that court data a lot of eligibility. Instead of having to get a eviction notice or a late rent letter, if we have the court data, we can move a lot faster. We shared our policies and templates with many fellow grantees all across the country. We did a lot of advocacy to Treasury around policy and flexibility. Excuse the typo in number 6. We also had a really close collaboration and a lot of funds sharing with Louisville and Lexington. The 3 of us began talking as soon as the legislation passed. Our programs were virtually identical in benefit profile. We did a lot of troubleshooting. We shared a lot of fraud candidates with each other. We just really collaborated closely. And I feel like that's demonstrated probably most prominently with how much we shared in funds with them. So if you'll go to the next slide, Jeremy. Because in addition to the funds we subgranted in July of 21, we also voluntarily reallocated more of our ERA 1 to Louisville and Lexington to keep their programs going. So that happened in January of 22, and that totaled $38.7 million. So a second bucket of $38.7 million to them. And then we took on Louisville's service area, so Jefferson County, in May of this year, but we did not take on Fayette. They did not ask us, but we voluntarily reallocated in September $6.9 million to Lexington to keep them going, because that resets the clock on their money, and they now get until the end of the calendar year to use those funds. So it was kind of a way to to game the rules and get Lexington money and make that money stretch a little further. So basically what I want the takeaway to be is we shared 32% of our ERA1 funds with Louisville and Lexington, recognizing that they are really the epicenters of evictions, and we did not need it all, and it only made our performance look good to do that and get those funds deployed. So we were happy to do it. And then just to let you know, we are still running Healthy at Home eviction relief. We have gotten, since May, we have deployed $59 million of assistance with ERA2 since May 1st of this year. We also are using ERA2 to do an in-the-court eviction diversion program. We are in 5 courtrooms in this state, and we fast-track those applications through HHERF. We have hired a small team of what we call housing connectors or navigators to help people get rehoused and to utilize our vouchers, because we are really struggling in that area. And then we have also made some modest ERA2 grants to our partners. 20 public housing authorities have ERA funds to help at-risk people lease up. The Kentucky Equal Justice Center and 4 legal aid organizations have gotten grants to offer legal advice and services to at-risk tenants. And 5 of our continuum of care homeless organizations are using ERA2 because they are out of some of their CARES money and want to keep the work going. So we're proud of kind of thinking about how to connect the dots and fill other gaps with these dollars. We don't know if Treasury will let us have our last tranche. They can't recapture what we have, but they might not give us the full amount Kentucky was originally allocated. Remains to be seen. I think that was my final slide. Yes. So I welcome any questions about ERA.
Wendy, that's really impressive. And you all had 3 disasters actually to deal with: COVID-19, Eastern and Western Kentucky. You're all to be commended for that.
Thanks.
Let me just say, there may be questions that you all have for Wendy, but let me just say that I know Wendy was quick to be appreciative of all the staff that work in these areas that report to her, and rightly so. There have been a lot of people that have really just they've done more than 1.5 jobs. But all 3 of the programs that Wendy is, well, the Eastern Kentucky, the Western Kentucky disaster, and the rental assistance program 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago did not exist, and were not a part of Wendy's job. Wendy's job is running the rest of the programs, which we haven't even touched on today, that are still continuing programs that go on. So if some of Wendy's staff is working 1.5 jobs, Wendy's working 3 jobs. So thank you, Wendy, but there may be questions.
Any members have any questions or comments in regard to this for Wendy?
Okay, if not, I think the next presenter up is John Davidson, who's going to give us an overview of the 2022 Affordable Housing Conference.
Can I just say one thing? Wendy, I text you my phone number if you could give me a call later.
Yeah, I got that, Beverly. I certainly will.
Thank you.
Thank you, Winston. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. It's good to be with you this afternoon. I am going to give you a brief summary of the 2022 Kentucky Affordable Housing Conference. As Winston mentioned, KHC hosted the Kentucky Affordable Housing Conference on September 21st and 22nd in the Galt House in Louisville. It was the first affordable housing conference in nearly 3 years for the corporation, and the turnout was excellent. We had over 450 attendees present, 27 exhibitors, and to appeal to a very diverse audience, KHC offered several tracks, including multifamily programs, single-family development, mortgage lending, specialized housing, HMIS, and leadership and business development for our partners. These training sessions also covered topics such as HR, management, diversity, construction cost, weatherization, inspections, the state of affordable housing in Kentucky, supportive housing services, and how to connect tenants with vouchers and affordable units. Our 2 main speakers, our plenary speakers on both days one was Dr. Matthew Desmond, an eviction expert who focused on the disparate impact of evictions, particularly on minority females with children, as well as Valerie Sargent, who is a national speaker, and she spoke on organizational leadership amongst periods of great change. During the conference on the evening of the 21st, KHC held its 50th anniversary celebration and awards dinner, recognizing several leaders in affordable housing. At this event, KHC created a new annual award in honor of Lynn Llewellyn and named him as the first recipient. Thanks to Chairman Denham, to Winston for presiding over this, as well as to the members who were able to be in attendance that evening. The 2023 conference will be in August next year in Lexington, Kentucky, so stay tuned. Should you want any conference materials or to see the 50th anniversary celebration awards video, Molly Tate, our communications director, can send those to you and would be happy to do so. So with that, I'll entertain any questions about the conference, but I wanted to give you a brief update and thank you all very much for your support and your attendance. And if it's okay, Mr. Chairman, I have one other minor item to chat about, which is not listed on the informational items.
Right ahead, Jonathan.
Thank you. So each year, Kentucky Housing Corporation participates in the Kentucky Employees Charitable Campaign, affectionately known as KECC in short. The KECC campaign, some of you might be familiar with this, is an opportunity for employees to generously donate to various activities and charities to support the basic needs of fellow Kentuckians, like homelessness, utility assistance, food, shelter, things of that nature. The campaign closed earlier this month, and I'm happy to share that KHC staff contributed over $23,000, which is nearly a 40% increase from last year. So just wanted to share that as well, and we exceeded our goal that we were shooting for. So wanted to share a little bit on behalf of sort of the business services side of the corporation via KECC, as well as the 2022 Kentucky Affordable Housing Conference. So thank you all very much, and I'm happy to entertain any questions should you have them.
Thank you so much, and please give our appreciation to the staff for that contribution, and thank you for your hard work on the conference. It was a great conference, and I had so many compliments about work you all are doing. Any members have any questions of John in regard to the conference?
Mike, I'd like to just add, if I can, the burden of running all these additional programs that I mentioned earlier that Wendy has carried the laboring oar on. That burden has been also carried by the rest of the deputies who do not necessarily have direct responsibility for them. In John's area, all the business support and logistic support for all those activities are carried out by the folks in his area. The same is true by the increased burden upon Jim Statler's staff, and same is true for the increased burden on the legal staff. So we've got a lot of people that are contributing, and of course, in addition to these programs this year, we undertook this affordable housing conference again, which we had not done for 3 years. So that was a big undertaking by John and all the people that work and report to him. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody understands that we've got a lot of people carrying a lot of loads, and it's appreciated by me. And of course, I know it's appreciated by you and the board.
We certainly appreciate all the work that the staff and all of you do. It's unbelievable, the work that you all do, and it's unbelievable the work you all have done the last two or 3 years. So we certainly appreciate it. Any members of the board have any comments they want to make, or any items that they would like to bring up at this point? So if not, I just have one brief comment. I just want to say this about the 50 years, that KHC's been in existence. They've made a lot of dreams come true. My dad told me once that one of the greatest days of his life was when he and his family moved into a house that had a cistern and a potbelly stove. And he said that it was a dream come true for them, for his brothers and sisters. And that's what Kentucky Housing does every day. Make important things happen and make dreams come true. And that's what you all have done for 50 years. That's what you continue to do. And I want to make sure that you continue to do it for the next 50 years because I am so impressed what the staff and management team does. And I certainly appreciate the board of directors' support and approval of what they do. It's just an amazing organization. And Winston, if you would give all the staff the board's appreciation for what they have gone through the last few years, we would certainly appreciate it.
We'll do that. We'll do that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any members have anything else? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Can I say one thing? I'm sorry. No, I just wanted to invite, I'm having the ribbon cutting for a new park in honor of Andrew and Charlotte Wade and Ann Incorporated, which were housing pioneers in Shipley. And it's going to be Saturday at 1:30. The governor and other legislatures will be attending. That's all.
Thank you, Beverly.
Any other members have anything they want to share before we adjourn? Okay, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment then.
I'll move.
Okay,
Second.
thank you, Kathy. Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, guys.